And the video today begins a new verse, Judges 6, verse 3. So it was, whenever Israel had sown, Midianites would come up, Amalekites, and the people of the east would come up against them. As our previous studies showed, Midian is a prophetic type of a sect of man's religion. Who is Amalek? The Amalekites. What are they a prophetic type of? The word Amalek literally means people of blood. A people never at peace with neighbors, a people whose chief would be a man of blood, an insatiable warrior. Eliphaz, the father of Amalek, was the first son of Esau by Adah. Eliphaz fathered a daughter, Timnah, adulterously. Eliphaz fathered Amalek by Timnah incestuously. The law of Moses says an adulterer must die, and a man who commits incest must die. This is a curse on Amalek. Amalek, therefore, rejected the law of Moses and turned the fatwa back on Israel, saying in his heart, "No, it is you that must die." Amalek, therefore, is the most insidious combination of a man of lawlessness and a man of blood. Like a rabid, wild creature, he is unredeemable, a constant threat and danger, and must be destroyed. If we look at the word Amalek in Hebrew, it's made of 4 letters: Ain, Mem, Lamed, and Kof. The Gematria of the 4 letters is Ain 70, Mem 40, Lamed 30, Kof 100. If you take the first 2 letters, Ain and Mem, and add their gematrias together, you get 110. The spiritual meaning of 110 is Day of Wrath. And the 110th book in the Bible is Leviticus 20, where there are listed the penalties for adultery and incest. If you take the last 2 letters of Amalek and you add their gematria together, 30 plus 100, the total is 130. The spiritual number means despise inheritance, and it points to the 130th chapter of the Bible, Numbers 13. Now, Esau was the father of Eliphaz, the grandfather of Amalek, and he famously despised his inheritance and sold his birthright for a pot of red stew. So Amalek can have the sense of people who eat blood, red stew, so to speak. That is, they're capable of killing their own relatives. Now, following the 7-year pattern of Judges 6 verse 1, where we understand verse 1 points to prophetically, is the 100-year period from the fall of Jerusalem, 587 BC. Judges 6 verse 3 therefore points prophetically to the 100-year period from 387 BC to 288 BC. Let's look at the events. In 356 BC, Alexander the Great was born. In 338 BC, Philip II of Macedon became the military leader of the League of Corinth, unifying Greece under his rule. In 336 BC, Philip II was assassinated, stabbed by his own bodyguard. Alexander the Great, his son, succeeded him, and in 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont to invade the Persian Empire. 332 BC was the siege of Tyre, in which Alexander the Great was successful. 2,000 Tyrians were crucified on the beach, and 30,000 Tyrians were made slaves. That's notable. When we say Alexander was a man of blood, we're not kidding around. In 332 BC, Alexander visits Jerusalem. He shows respect to the high priest and then leaves. This behavior shocks his Greek companions. In 323 BC, after completing a succession of conquests, Alexander dies. His empire is partitioned among the Diadochi, the companions, senior soldiers who were with Alexander from his youth. In 321 BC, the empire was partitioned again. Numerous prophecies were fulfilled during this time frame. Firstly, the destruction of Tyre, prophesied by Ezekiel chapter 26. Secondly, the rise of Greece to a great domain empire status, Daniel 11 verse 3, which most commentators would agree is the same empire as the male goat of Daniel chapter 8, with the notable horn, single horn between his eyes. And the division of the Greek Empire into 4 parts, which was prophesied by Daniel 11, verse 4. So Alexander the Great appears in the time frame pointed to by Judges 6, verse 3, 387 to 288 BC. Is Alexander a fulfillment of Amalek? Absolutely yes. Number 1, Alexander was a man of blood, an insatiable warrior who fought non-stop. Number 2, Alexander was a man of lawlessness. He made up his own rules. He was the supreme basileus, absolute dictator under no law, accountable to no man. This makes his interaction in Jerusalem with the high priest almost miraculous. Each party showed the other respect and even deference. It is as if the supreme warrior and the supreme religious person came to a mutual understanding, an alliance advantageous to both parties. We will now examine a Gematria study into Judges 6 verse 3, which will explain what I mean by this. We will combine the words into couplets and triplets as we did in the last verse, last video. So there will be 4 sections or couplets and triplets. The first is, and so, when sowed or sown. And so, Gematria 26, when sowed, Gematria 878. The total is Gematria 904, which has the spiritual meaning, wild dogs eat up the earth. The next section, 2. Israel, up came Midian. The Gematria of Israel 541, up came 111, Midian 754. So the total of that triplet is 1406. The meaning, spiritual meaning of 1406 is grasping wife, children and cattle, all mine. So what is our insight into the spiritual numbers of the Gematria, especially those 2, the first couplet and the first triplet? Wild dogs eat up the earth. The spiritual insight is that during this time frame, 387 to 288 BC, there will be a heathen invasion the heathen being the dogs, who will take over control of the land. Grasping wife, children and cattle, all mine. What's the spiritual insight? The religious leaders, the wife, so to speak, will keep control of the people and the chattels. So we can look at these two sections together, one after the other, as a kind of a legal transaction or a deal. Now, if you add the Gematria of Section 1, Section 2 together, wild dogs eat up the earth, Gematria 904, grasping wife, Gematria 1406, you get a total Gematria of 2,310. The spiritual meaning of the number is quiet woman fully submits to her husband. So we really do have an alliance here. The religious leaders are pledging loyalty and allegiance to a heathen king in return for the right to practice their religion. Let's look at the last half of the verse. Section 3, and Amalek, Gematria 246. In this section, there's only one word. In the next section, the final section, Section 4, there are 3 words. And sons of the east, Gematria 772, and they came up, Gematria 112, against them, Gematria 116. So the total Gematria of Section 4 is 772 plus 112 plus 116 equals Gematria of 1,000. Spiritual number 1,000 means tribe, bride of the bridegroom. What is the spiritual insight? Section 3, false messiah, is pretty straightforward. The false messiah is Alexander the Great, the bridegroom. He's a savior who protects Judea, but he's false because he's an unbeliever. Section 4, bride of the bridegroom, this is a religious leader of the Jews, the high priest, arrayed in his beautiful robes and his jewelry. Now, if we combine the two sections together, Section 3 and Section 4, false messiah reigns, Gematria 246, tribe, bride of the bridegroom, Gematria 1000, the total is Gematria 1246. The spiritual meaning of that number is temple harlot. She gives and gives, but gets no love. Spiritual insight is that in this instance, the religion takes the role in this ungodly alliance of a harlot. She's not a legitimate wife. She can't be. She's a different religion to the bridegroom. Furthermore, she's pledged to belong to the King of the Jews. So as a result of this policy, Greek culture, Greek language, Greek architecture even spread throughout the empire. There were few rebellions and insurrections from the foreign peoples they ruled. However, Alexander died shortly after these events, and as we'll see in the following verses, Greek rulers of the partitioned empire were more faithful and true to the Amalek spiritual type than Alexander. They were filled with hatred, venom, and violence towards Israel.